It is 6 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Just before we get into this, Reed, I just wanted to talk kind of logistics amongst us. I wonder if it wouldn't be better to just have Brent ask the questions so then we can listen to responses, jot down notes, and ask follow-up questions if we see fit. Any objections to that?
No, that saves me from thinking about the questions.
That's what I was, yeah.
Any objections,
Yes.
Brent? All right.
Okay. Reed, why don't you come on up?
Sure.
Brent has something to read.
Yep.
Should I introduce myself first?
I think we know who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe
Well-
online. You know?
Formal process.
We're actually, formal
Oh, is that
process.
part of that?
Brent's
Okay.
going to go first. Please sit down.
Okay, no worries.
So I have a message from Councilmember Christy Mock reading, I would like to apologize for my absence this evening for your interviews. I had a medical procedure on Monday, and unfortunately, I'm not feeling up to par as of yet and won't be able to attend. Please know that I am watching online tonight and closely listening to each of your interviews. I appreciate all of you for applying, and I regret that I won't be able to be there in person tonight. Thank you.
Get well.
All right.
All right. You want to introduce yourself to the council and
sure.
People watching online?
My name is Reed Welch. I live at 1813 Red Oak Ridge in Carver since 2009.
All right. Thank you, Reed. First question. Why did you apply for the vacancy, and what makes you the best candidate to hold the office of council member?
Oh. All right. So, you know, I've been on the Planning Commission since 2000. Oh man, I should have written this down. 2000, so 5 years. 2018. And I've really enjoyed it. I like being able to see how the city is developing. I like to be able to give back to the community. I enjoy, trying to help future residents and think about what I'd like to see Carver. And then I had honestly toyed with maybe running for city council in the future. It didn't quite work out for this election season. And then when I saw that Joy had to step down, that it was like the stars aligning and like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to, get a good experience. I think I'm the best candidate because as being on the Planning Commission, a lot of the stuff City Council, you guys have to do is, review and do the final approval of all the projects that come through the Planning Commission. I'm also currently on the Carver County Park Advisory Board. So that's also given me some experience in some of the budgeting and some of the other aspects. So part of some of my duties there as the park board is we look at, conditional use permits for park facilities. We went over the park department's budget request to the county for 2 meetings. And then I just think that I'm a good balance of new, because I've never been a city council person before, but also experience, like I said, with having, some experience in the county and again, experience at the Planning Commission level.
Thank you. Reed, please describe your vision for the city of Carver.
All right. So I think we're going in the right direction. Like I said, I've lived here since 2009. When we started out, we still had a field, a couple blocks away from our development. We live in Spring Creek, right? And across the way was a wide open field. There was no school. So I see the vision for Carver, the future is continued growth, right? I mean, we've got the highway, and on the Planning Commission, we've pretty steadily had 1 or 2 development projects a year, maybe some more or less depending on, economic conditions. So I see in the future very continued growth in housing. Obviously, one of the big concerns in that is trying to get more affordable housing. As being on the Planning Commission, I've seen the expected home prices keep rising every year, and it's the level where it's pretty amazing what the asking prices are for current housing. So, trying to diversify the housing base, right? Get some more entry level, townhomes, starter homes, apartments, that kind of thing. And then also try and get some more business development. So the good stuff like the Mizzy's Pizza and the Hometown Bank we just approved last week or last meeting. Trying to continue some more commercial development. And then the main reason we moved to Carver was the trail system, and we live right on the bluff, right? So we look over our backyard's full of trees, and we can look down to the Spring Creek Trail or the Green Trail that runs down behind into downtown. So we walk that very often. And then that's also one of the cool things I like being on the Planning Commission is it seems like every new project we're trying to get more new trails and more walking and more livability. So the big thing I think for the future is going to be being responsible in the growth, right? So if you're planning ahead for a 7,000 or 10,000 person city when you're 5, right? You have to build out the infrastructure a little ahead of time, right? So I know that we were just the city council was talking about a new maintenance facility. I mean, that's not super, not a big thing for residents, but it's part of the city doing its job, right? So you need to have enough snow plows, you need to have enough, city infrastructure to support what we currently have, right? So, and again, with being a growing city, you kind of have to get out ahead of it a little bit. So what else is vision? And I think the parks, I think Carver does a great job in the parks. Like I said, we use the trails, new Ironwood Park. We've been in there a couple times, riding around the trails. I'm not a big skateboard person, but the skate park looks really cool. And I think that would be a general vision for Carver.
Sure. Thank you. Please describe your leadership and communication style.
So my leadership style is I like to think I lead by example. I take pride in, again, on the Park Commission and on the Planning Commission is being well prepared. I read all the packets. I think of questions ahead of time. I'm sure Erin can attest when I was the chairman, she would call every week and we just go over the meeting. I would always have 2 or 3 questions ahead of her call ready for her. So as a leadership, being well prepared and then also being flexible. So my job is I'm a computer programmer, but my job is to find bugs in other programs. So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? My job is to find other people's mistakes, right? So doing that in a productive and collaborative way is, right, because, obviously no one wants to make mistakes, but, so we design microchips, and they're horrendously expensive, tens of millions of dollars. So mistakes are very costly. And then my communication style is I am very outgoing. I'm very friendly. I like to talk. I'm not shy, so I don't think there'd be any issue on the council of taking an unpopular opinion, standing up maybe for a particular point of view that may be different than anyone else. Again, as part of my job, that's, conflict is kind of inevitable when you find other people's mistakes, and just handling that productive and, going forward approach.
Please tell us about a time when you made a difficult decision. Describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others to come to a final decision.
let me think. Good. So I guess I'll try to think of a couple here. So just as planning commission experience, when we did the Brookview preliminary plat and rezoning, that was a very contentious. There was lots of great resident feedback, but most of it was negative. So the difficulty in there was trying to balance the residents' concerns of, they had this nice woods in their backyard and the developers coming in and, going to put in houses and stuff, which is, what happens if there's open space. And then balancing against, the developer and the future Carver residents, right? So they needed a place to live, they needed houses, right? So it was going to be, difficult in trying to balance those two concerns, right? So again, I think as the planning commission, we did a great job of getting feedback. The city staff was wonderful of giving, what's legal required, what kind of constraints the developer had to meet in terms of, number of houses per acre and those kind of development things. And then again, trying to balance with the residents' concerns of this beautiful woods in their backyard is going to get torn down and turned into houses. So, some of the other things we did is we wrote some notes down here on that one. Right, we ended up adding between the preliminary plat and final plat, we added some more berming and some more landscaping to kind of buffer in between the existing houses and the current and the new houses. And then the developer also agreed to reduce the density a little bit. So that's a planning commission one, and then I think of other general decision. I think.
Okay, thank you. Please describe your expectations related to the roles and responsibilities of council member, and what expectations you would have for city staff and fellow council members.
So, as a benefit of being on the planning commission, I already have a lot of interaction with city staff, Brent, and then obviously Aaron, the community development director, and also Aaron Schmidt, the assistant city engineer. As being on the council, the planning commission, we rely heavily on the staff for the reports, and the job of, again, as city council going forward and as currently as planning commissioner is to, they worked hard to give you that information. Like I said, read it, be diligent, look for questions, prepare. It's their job to help you make decisions, right? So listen to their advice, read it, understand it, and then as the council, I I know all of you take your job seriously. So again, that same commit, read the prepared staff reports. Think of questions ahead of time, and again, I would just kind of. I often at planning commission meetings, if anyone is, have a lot of questions, and have occasionally gotten me look from Cindy where I'm asking too many questions, but I don't think you can ask too many questions, and just show up. Do the work, do the research, and that's what I would do.
Compare and contrast your vision for the city in comparison to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. In your answer, please specifically share your thoughts on overall housing growth in the community, affordable housing, infrastructure needs, and the historic downtown.
Can you get through those ones again, the affordable housing, infrastructure?
Sure. In your answer, specifically share your thoughts on overall housing growth in the community, 2, affordable housing, 3, infrastructure needs, and 4, the historic downtown.
Like I said, I already mentioned, I'll do it slightly order. The affordable housing, I think that is a big concern. I know it's in our plan, but the difficulty is, right, the city doesn't build houses, right? So, as on the planning commission and personally, I've tried to brainstorm methods of promoting more, lower, not more, higher density, lower cost developments, right? Again, as city council, I think I would keep pushing for that, trying to get more apartments, like I said, more townhomes, more affordable housing, more kind of smaller starter homes, and then with the general housing, we're a growing community, right? There's, like I said, again, on the planning commission, we do maybe 2 or 3 developments a year, depending on conditions, right? So we would keep going. And I think I know Brent gave us a presentation on the planning commission presentation on the 2040 plan earlier this year, or maybe late last year, whenever we had that. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I know a lot of work goes into that, and I think we are generally going in the right direction in terms of a city, right? And then on the infrastructure, again, I had mentioned that earlier, is trying to balance the growth needs with the current development, right? You don't want to get too far out over our skis, right, and overspend on stuff you don't need, but you also have to be responsible and make sure you have the infrastructure, like on snow plows, the right enough lawn mowers, that kind of stuff, right, for the parks and that kind of development going forward. And then, the historic downtown is another great thing in Carver. If you think about like Chaska downtown and Carver downtown, it's no comparison, right? The Chaska downtown is kind of dead and boring, right? Sorry, Chaska, but it's true. Right? The city has done a very good job of preserving our historic aspects. I know every time I walk through there, it's always fun to look at the plaques and like, wow, this house was built in 1850, and having a good historic downtown is like a vibrancy and like part of the city, right? With Steamboat Days and the ice cream shop and all the bars and restaurants and the new Goodaway Motor Cafe, right? Just kind of that is all part of Carver, right? I think it's a great. I know we have a Heritage Preservation Commission. I think that is a key aspect of keeping the historic nature and doing responsible development.
Reed, please share your assessment of the city's 2023 through 2026 strategic plan.
All right. Actually, this is the one I think we had the presentation a couple of meetings ago. I think one of the key highlights that I recall from that was fiscal responsibility, and as the city council, that's probably the most difficult decision is setting the taxes, right? Where it's one of the obviously least popular things we have to do, or you have to do, hopefully me. So trying to, get the, like I said, balance the growth and get your infrastructure and your fiscal house in order where you could, I know we had talked about possibly doing some bonding for the new maintenance facility, right? Where, that's a long-term investment, right? You'd build it out for a 10 or 15-year lifespan, right? So that would something that, in my mind, would be a perfect use of, debt, right? Where you think you buy a house, right? You're investing in a long-term asset. Where I know this. Another thing is the street, street maintenance, right? I know the city has started recently budgeting specific amounts and an increasing amount for the annual street maintenance and planning ahead. That's again something that we're going to need to do consistently over time, right? So that's maybe not something you'd want to take out debt for, right? Because it's a continuing, ongoing expense. And I think even Christy mentioned about just keeping up the church by the river, right? It's going to need more maintenance, right? Budgeting, being responsible in the budgeting and that stuff. And then, let's see what else was in the strategic plan. I should have looked before. Yeah, I think that's all I can remember about off the top of my head.
What are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city of Carver, and what are your ideas on how to approach them?
Jot a couple down here and pick 3. All right, so I jot a couple down. I'll think of my. I think the top challenge, as I've mentioned probably a couple times now, is the affordable housing. If people can't afford to live in Carver, then Carver won't grow. And I know some of the stuff that we're currently working on the Planning Commission is simplifying maybe some of the zoning ordinances to make it easier for developers to build slightly smaller houses that would theoretically be more affordable. So I would support that of trying to do incentives. Again, I know the Carver Development Agency is still contemplating adding apartments next to the existing Carver Crossing. So I would support that. And I think that's a great idea, again, of having I think that's even mixed use with some senior living last time I saw, and just general apartments. So trying to work with developers and the Carver County to get more affordable housing. And then my second biggest challenge for the city is actually going to be the infrastructure spending, right? Where now that we have the money for the levy, we actually have to do all the work to get it built, right? So that's going to be a lot of planning and construction schedules, and then also with being on the County Parks Commission, right? We have the Merriam Junction Trail with the connection to Scott County, right? Starting about that same time too. So there's going to be a lot of decisions that the city council and the city is going to need to make, and spending actually vast sum of money, right? Over $10 million for the whole project, right? So that's being responsible and being diligent and thoughtful and getting it right? You're not going to be able to get a do-over, right? So we have to be very diligent and very responsible. And then I guess the third challenge I had written down here was again trying to get more commercial development. We have the Lakeview Industries and the Fleet Farm, but I think there's the few smaller, I guess the new Hometown Bank, and but there still seems like there's a lot more room for more commercial development and, you know, small shops or light industry up on 212, right? I think that is a challenge to help, you know, diversify the tax base as well, too, right? Again, back to taxes. You know, businesses typically pay higher property taxes, as I recall, right? So, or have more valuable real estate, right? So then they pay a higher percentage, I guess, maybe how to say it, of just trying to, you know, get an even growth, right? Where it's not necessarily just all housing and trying to balance out with some commercial development.
Reed, I just want to interrupt. I just
Sure.
want to let you know what kind of marathon you're running. This isn't an effort to try to reel you in for time.
Sorry.
We'll take as long as you want, but we have 11 questions. You're on number 9, so you have
okay.
left. And again, I just
Sure.
share that.
Okay, no
to
problem.
let you know that the end is somewhat near, but like, take your time.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
Fine, we'll take as long as this needs.
No problem.
Reed, why didn't you run for city council in the most recent election in 2022? And if appointed, would you run for re-election in 2024?
So yes, I would run in 2024. And why didn't I run in the previous election was I am in the middle of remodeling our basement by myself. So I didn't think I had either the time or enough finances to spend, right? If I didn't think I could win, if I didn't think I'd give it my best effort, then I didn't want to run. So that's why I didn't run. And then we're almost done, so I'll have my basement. It'll be all great, and it'll be free cash flow for all basement money is going to re-election campaign. No.
What do you think is the most impactful decision made by the city council in 2023? Please explain why.
I'm going to probably do one out to left field here. So, I think that was 2023. Hope I got the year right.
You'll hear us all go, if you got it
Oh,
wrong.
okay. 2023. It was in 2022. Never mind. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I got one. I'll use this as like a springboard. I'd say that it was the cannabis moratorium. So it was impactful because my general impression, I follow politics pretty well. I happened to attend as part of one of the park board meetings. I was at the county board meeting where they're discussing this. The state did a terrible job of explaining the rules, and there's a whole mess of things that the cities and county are going to have to figure out. So the most impactful and correct decision was to defer the decision into the future. But that means it's still on our plate, right? So that I think the moratorium is through the end of 2024, but that's also when it starts being legalized, right? So we'd have to we basically have the rest of this year to get our plan ahead for when it becomes legal in the January or whatever. So I think that's also a big opportunity, right? So, I mean, we have currently the Strange CBD hemp store there in Carver already, so that maybe seems like a natural extension if we want it. But I think it does have a lot of difficult decisions that we have to weigh, and so I guess that would be my.
Only because I'm curious,
Okay.
and you don't have to explain it, but
Sure.
what was the first example you were thinking of that happened in 2022?
Oh, it would have been the Lisa's place. That was the last year where the council had to decide whether
Yep.
to renew a
Yep.
liquor license. Yeah,
Yep.
it was impactful for her. So I think that's the time is thinking ahead of the decisions impact people. And that was a very, very direct example. Yeah.
And then finally, the city council has work sessions at 5:30 PM and regular meetings at 7 PM on the first and third Mondays of each month. Does this meeting schedule conflict with any personal or professional commitments that you have?
No. And I attend probably more city council meetings than the average citizen.
So council, that completes the
Okay.
organized questions. There's opportunity for follow-up as needed.
Any follow-ups?
On commercial development, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on how to attract commercial development?
I know, can correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but I know when we did the Lakeview Industry, we got a grant or part of a state development funding to build some of the infrastructure, like the road. So I would, again, encourage the city to be as proactive as we can at getting, that kind of economic development aid from the state if available. And then I would try, I don't think we have like a Chamber of Commerce, but I know there's like Southwest Chamber of Commerce, but just trying to get our name out there more, right? We've got great, the freeway is a great way to get people in and out. If you have a business, then you drive and short commutes, and even both directions now, right? As the interstate's getting widened right from Cologne, so we can draw people from not only like eastern suburbs, like Eden Prairie, right? Draw people in from Cologne and Young America, and that way, right? Again, on the infrastructure and having, being a nice centrally located city.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any follow-ups?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
The only other question that I have for you is,
Sure.
Brent talked about the cadence of our meetings. There are also occasional other meetings. We're
Okay.
meeting on a Wednesday night in
Sure.
the middle of the week because we're doing council interviews. Each council member is assigned, and this probably wouldn't happen whoever we appoint now until the beginning of next year. But,
Okay.
there are other additional meetings.
Oh, sure.
events. How flexible is your schedule?
Yeah, so I have a very flexible work schedule, thankfully. And then the county park board meetings are the second Wednesday of every month. So that would be the only like fixed conflict I have there at 6:30 usually, so.
All right. That's all I had.
Great.
Thank you very much for your
Yes,
time.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Rita.
no problem.
Can you do me a
Grab.
favor? You're welcome
Glenn?
to stay all night, but can you prop that door open?
Oh, yeah, it's gonna get warm in
Literally
here,
an
yeah.
open door meeting.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, grab Glenn.
He should know.
Okay. You're up. Not too bad.
You just have to push it.
Just push it.
It just stays.
In the words of
There it
salt and
goes.
pepper.
It's been-
Push it real good. Good evening.
Well, good evening,
Hi,
council.
Glenn.
Is it all right if I have these for the questions?
I'm sorry?
Is it all right if I have this for the questions?
As long as it's not ChatGPT answering.
No problem.
Before we get started, Glenn, just want to read a message from Councilmember Christy Mock. I would like to apologize for my absence this evening for your interviews. I had a medical procedure on Monday, and unfortunately, I'm not feeling up to par as of yet and won't be able to attend. Please know that I'm watching online tonight and closely listening to each of your interviews. I appreciate all of you for applying and regret that I won't be able to be there in person tonight. Thank you. So
Okay.
before we get started with the questions, Glenn, you want to introduce yourself to the council and those watching online, please?
Glenn Henry, I live at 326th Street West, Carver. Longtime resident of Carver. I grew up in Carver. I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy hockey. Married to Heidi. She's in Germany right now. She'll be there for another week. So 3 weeks of, well, some would call it peace and quiet. I call it lots of honey-do list items.
Then we've asked Brent to ask all the questions so that we can focus and jot down.
And
notes.
answer.
So if we're
Perfect.
not making perfect eye contact, please know that we're focusing on scribbling.
No problem. But
All right, first question, Glenn, why did you apply for the vacancy and what makes you the best candidate to hold the office of council member?
I applied for the position because there are a few projects that I'd like to see through to the end. Third Street Bridge would be one of them. I want to see the 40 intersection at 40 and 61, the entrance from the east side. And I also want to see some of the park projects. Reason I feel I'm best for the council position, I have a little long tooth in being on the council for 12 years, so I think the learning curve for me to get up to speed would be rather quick. I don't think the council would skip a beat as far as moving on with the city business. But the reason I ran is I just want to see a few more projects through to the end.
Thank you. Please describe your vision for the city of Carver.
I've always been one to believe that there's different facets of Carver. There's born in Carver, raised in Carver, work in Carver, live in Carver, and till you retire. Carver for life. There's different facets of what Carver has gone through over the years as far as growth. The past 12 years, Carver's basically doubled in size. Residential, some public housing. But the size and population is we're over 6,000 now. So that's growth. I believe that we can do it in a way that it doesn't hit people hard with their taxes and yet continue to grow from what we've done in the past, over the past 12 years.
Thank you. Please describe your leadership and communication style.
I look for collaboration with people, not always forming consensuses, but always having a conservative point of view, fiscally sound, and I like to think before I answer questions and look at all sides of the issue before making a decision on how to move forward in the best interests of Carver. Communication, I'm not your web tech savvy guy, but I can text and I can email and I can usually like picking up the phone, but face-to-face is usually pretty good.
You called me?
Please tell us about a time when you made a difficult decision. Describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others before you came to a final decision.
Repeat that one more time.
Sure. Tell us about a time when you made a difficult decision. Describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others to come to a final decision.
Carver Crossing. Very contentious issue. I was on the council at the time, and we were basically had to be, what's the term, judges, where we couldn't speak or consult with other council members as far as our opinions or where we stood on the project, because we had to be just open to both sides of the issue throughout the whole thing. Throughout the whole process, it was very contentious with homeowners of Carver, the citizens, and what was it actually going to bring to the city. I looked at it where there was a role and a need for workforce housing in Carver because of the growth of the commercial and other stuff that we were projecting to come down the pike. My decision was to vote for the project because in the best interest of Carver moving forward, it was important to have that need filled and a start for what's going to be coming within the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. Please describe your expectations related to the roles and responsibilities of council member and what expectations you would have of city staff and fellow council members.
The roles and responsibilities of a city council member is to always do in your heart what's in the best interests of the city. It's not always about what you believe is best. It's about what's in the best interests of the city. The role and responsibility of a council member is to do it responsibly, fiscally sound, and sway people in a way that they understand your point of view. The expectations of the staff, I always believed in stay in your own lane. The staff, they all have a role, and they're all good at their roles. Being on the council, I was taught to go through Brent, city manager, and however he saw fit to contact which person in the staff that was responsible, it fell in their lane. That's where that communication would go. But I didn't just jump to that person and say, hey, we got an issue, da, da, da. No, went through Brent because that's the proper channels to take. Council members, you just always have to be conscious of open meeting laws. So very careful about being in the same room, different times. All of a sudden you walk in, you better know when to walk away, or that we just don't want to have another Victoria.
Sure. Next question. Please compare and contrast your vision for the city in comparison to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. In your answer, specifically share your thoughts on 1, overall housing growth in the community, 2, affordable housing, 3, infrastructure needs, and 4, the historic downtown.
2040 comp plan was an long and arduous task put on the city every 10 years to plan for your future. Being a part of that, you're looking at different parks, different areas that you want to expand to. Highway 212 was one of them. And what type of businesses, where your business districts are going to be, where your housing is going to be, and you want it to blend. The comp plan was an interesting, very interesting project. Overall housing and the growth of the community. Carver is in a unique place where our residential needs, specifically just single-family housing, we're in tune to what's going on. We can't mandate people build certain types of houses or anything. All we can do is guide them to different areas of the community that projects are or land is for sale. PRDs are part of comp plans. But if we need to use special financing, that's always an option. Affordable housing, that's kind of driven by the CDA. I hate the word affordable housing because what's affordable? Okay, is it single family? Is it apartments? Is it senior living? What type of housing are we talking? It's a style of housing, not whether it's affordable or not, because most people, what's affordable to some people isn't affordable to others. So keeping knowing who's buying our houses in the areas and the price points that they're paying, it's a lot of money. A foot in the door home now is $400,000. It's just the way it is. That can't be stopped simply because of labor, materials, land costs. A lot of factors go into why housing costs what it costs. As far as the affordable, I'd rather see the CDA get involved like they are and stepping up. That the first phase of the project went well. I look at it where it was a win for the city. And I think that in collaboration with the county, we could have more projects like that. Being a partner with them would be a better option than just having them mandate, yeah, we're coming in and this is what we're going to do. Infrastructure, in the last tenure, we knocked out a lot of infrastructure. Got the water treatment facility, 2 new wells, the highways, we got Jonathan Carver Parkway, all integral parts of a well-rounded infrastructure for commuters, for people that live here. It all comes with a cost. But in doing so, we did it in ways that, in creative ways, that made it affordable for everybody to stay in town. Historic downtown's historic. It is what it is. It's not growing any bigger. It's not getting any smaller. It's existing. And the people, basically, the new people that come to Carver need to understand that the historical part of Carver is huge. We are one of the first people that are on the historical list, I guess it was this. And we have over 100 structures that mean something to Carver. And keeping them up to codes and a part of Carver, an integral part of Carver, it's important.
Could you please share your assessment of the city's most recent strategic plan, 2023 through 2026?
Wasn't part of that, and I am unprepared on that one. I've been a part of many other strategic planning sessions, and it's such a collaboration with all departments to come up with the wants and needs of where we're headed, or where we're at, where we're headed, and how are we going to get there. And the strategic plan defines the how we're going to get there and working step by step to achieve those goals.
What are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city of Carver, and what are your ideas on how to approach them?
Law enforcement. I think with the sheriffs, we need to have, the sheriff's office has been going, it's not easy to work with them, but it's not difficult either. They have their criteria that they need to meet. But we also have demands throughout the city that I'd like to see the sheriff step up a little bit more in patrols and just coverage of security. Growing in Carver, I don't know what our housing stock is now. I know it's been dwindling the last couple of years, but they're still buying houses, just not as fast as they were, and that's got a lot to do with many things that are out beyond our control, like interest rates. But making sure that the developers understand that we have criteria in Carver that we want to make sure that they follow and adhere to, so that way we can be a partner with them and not so much we're coming here to build houses and get out. Another one is what I've seen in the growth of the bypass or the Carver, Jonathan Carver Parkway and 212 corridor. It's nice to see that we have more businesses that are opening their eyes to Carver, and we welcome them with open arms. And yet, we need to make sure that they follow our rules when they come in and apply for their permits. If they come in and apply for the permits, just making sure that they do build according to our codes, and commercial and industrial area should be coming to Carver soon. It's too obvious not to.
I read this question understanding that the first part doesn't apply to you, but bear with me. Why didn't you run for city council in the most recent election in 2022? And if appointed, would you run for re-election in 2024?
Well, the first part's a pretty simple answer. If appointed, would I run in 2024? Depending on, I have some goals that I would like to see done. I have some benchmarks that I would like to see the city move along with. 40 corridor. That's such a integral thing. Everybody's talking 212, but our big brother to the east, Chaska, we have a lot of traffic that comes through there. That needs to be welcome to Carver. And right now it's not that. I'd like to see that move forward and come to fruition. As far as rerunning in 2024, if some of my benchmarks are made, no, I would not run. But I can't guarantee that I will run. Everything's up in the air.
What do you think is the most impactful decision the city council has made in 2023?
Moving forward with the fire station project, I think is a big decision, and it's the right decision. We need our fire department. They don't ask for anything that they don't need, and they usually do a pretty good job of justifying every dollar that they spend. And when they need space, they need space. And so moving forward with the fire station is a big thing.
Then last question, the city council has work sessions at 5:30 p.m. and regular meetings at 7 on the first and third Mondays of each month. Does this meeting schedule conflict with any personal or professional commitments that you have?
That's a tough one. No.
All right. That concludes the organized questions. Open it back to the council for any follow-ups.
I don't have any follow-ups. You guys?
No, either.
So at the beginning, the vision of Carver, you said, you acknowledge that we've doubled in size, and boy, since I've been here, we've more than quadrupled in size. Is there a right size for Carver? Is it too big? What do you see? What's your vision of the right size for Carver? Or do you have one?
Carver is in a very unique physical location. The Carver can grow. Cologne is seven miles away. Chanhassen is 7 miles away. Chanhassen and Chaska is that 7 miles. There's 40,000 people. No, closer to 60,000 people in that 7 mile span. They can't grow north and south anymore, or east or west for the most part. Carver can grow to Cologne and all the way down to the river. That being said, there's a lot of room for expansion. I've always been a builder friendly. Knowing what people want to build is a difficult thing. We don't have some housing stock in town. We don't have $1 million mansions. We don't have, well, I shouldn't say that, the lowest end of the housing stock either. We have very limited supply of trailer areas. We won't expand on that. But when Carver grows, I look at it where it's not too big. I just want to make sure that when people, there's a mix of commercial, there's a mix of residential, there's a mix of industrial. The housing stocks, the senior center, that project, that one kind of warmed the heart. I know it was a tough pill for the previous owner of the property, but when all was said and done, they were pretty proud of the product that was put there. And I would like to see more of that, because I feel that there is a definite need for senior housing, not just in Carver, throughout the state. But that's coming to Carver, there's not a right size. Carver is Carver. And people want to be part of that, of the aura of being from Carver. And when you make it accessible for them to understand that, hey, we're local people. We try to keep it, we're low key. It's a unique area because there's farms as far as the eye can see to the west of us. And we have all this other growth, cities right there too. We are we're the hub. We're the hub for southern Minnesota coming up to work through the Jonathan Carver corridor, taking 212 in. Coming in east from 212 or from out western Minnesota. If we can harness what we can do with the corridor on Jonathan Carver Parkway, I think that would be huge to the future growth of the residential and what people want to build in town.
Thank you. Great.
All right, that's it for questions. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
We're really short on time, and we haven't let anybody else.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Glenn.
No problem.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Stay tuned.
I'm gonna switch.
Oh,
To do a little color coding.
good evening.
Good evening. I heard Christy isn't feeling well.
Yeah, I have
In
a,
fact,
yeah, I have a message to read from Councilmember Christie Mock. I'd like to apologize for my absence this evening for your interviews. I had a medical procedure on Monday, and unfortunately, I'm not feeling up to par as of yet and won't be able to attend. Please know that I'm watching online tonight and closely listening to each of your interviews. I appreciate all of you for applying, and I regret that I won't be able to be there in person tonight. Thank you.
so Kayla, we've asked Brent to ask the questions so that we
Okay.
can focus on listening to your answers and jotting down questions. So I apologize in advance if, on behalf of all of us, if we're making poor eye contact, but I'm trying to make sure that I'll be able to read what I wrote eventually.
Of course, I have to do it with clients all the time.
So Kayla, tonight we're just starting off before we get into the questions, giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the council and those watching online.
Wonderful. My name is Kayla Pasco. I'm a resident of Carver, have been since 2020. Grew up in the Chaska area and graduated from Chaska High School. I'm currently a licensed attorney in the state of Minnesota, as well as a fertility care practitioner with a location here in the city of Carver.
All right. Thank you. Starting off, why did you apply for the vacancy and what makes you the best candidate to hold the office of council member?
So I applied for the vacancy because I believe very strongly in creating community and then serving that community. I am someone who was raised to make sure that I know my neighbors and that we have a system in which we can support each other within our neighborhoods. And that it goes even broader to the entire city. I believe that I am the best person for the job because I have experience doing that sort of organization. I run the unofficial welcome wagon in my neighborhood, as well as my husband and I always host the neighborhood block party. And from that, we've been able to create connections throughout the neighborhood, allowing for babysitting, assistance in emergency situations, making sure that people have resources that they need. Additionally, I have training as an attorney, so I have experience with contracts, highly detailed information, reading statutes, and writing those same types of things, so ordinances, et cetera, and highly detailed work in that way. Similarly, my background, I have a fairly diverse background from my university days. I have a degree in chemistry with a minor in what is essentially political science, and I've had some training on local governance, but I also have experience in local governance. I was on the Community Outreach Task Force in the city of Crystal, worked with them to develop programs to bring the very diverse and very interesting city of Crystal together for building community and also addressing any needs that different types of the community had. Furthermore, have worked with the city of the county, Carver County. I serve on the Water Management Organization and the Mental Health Legislative Advisory Committee. So I have experience dealing with these issues, working with the public, and building those communities as areas grow and change.
Thank you. Please describe your vision for the city of Carver.
My vision for the city of Carver is twofold. First of all, I want to make sure that we utilize the very unique resources we have in our downtown. We are different from a lot of other suburb or near suburb cities because we have the beautiful downtown, and we need to be able to leverage that in the best way possible in order to make our downtown a place that people want to come to, even if they're not residents of Carver, being able to build those businesses and build that destination. But at the same time, the most important thing that we need to do is we need to set up our city to be able to support its own community as we continue to grow. We need to make sure that we are in a financial position to be able to deal with issues as they come up, but also to anticipate problems that may arise and various things that need to be updated or added to as we go forward. So an example is when we first moved in here, the city of Carver was working very hard to update the water treatment facility to support all of the additional growth that's happening up by us. I live right behind the Quick Trip in that area, and I remember all the work that went into that. And that's the kind of projects that we need to keep in the very forefront and keep on priority, because we as a community and we especially as a city council are only as good or as useful as we are keeping in mind the needs of our constituents and our neighbors.
Please describe your leadership and communication styles.
So when it comes to leadership, I tend to lead by example. That is my preferred leadership style. I am not one to put down the hammer or micromanage. I'm a big fan of delegation with proper support and then being able, again, to lead by that set example. What was the second half of the question?
Communication style.
Communication style. Generally, my communication style, I'm very open to communication. I tend to think out loud, so I tend to talk probably more than some people think I should. But I love hearing what other people have to say. I'm always open to listening to other people and their input and their conversations and their concerns. When it comes to kind of the nitty-gritty, one of the things that I always do when I start with a new client or a new job is I always ask what their preferred method of communication is, because some people are more comfortable with phone calls, emails, in person, and I think that we communicate most effectively as individuals when we are communicating and taking into account the best way that the people we're talking to are communicating as well. And I find that that's a very important role, because if you are relying too heavily on email with someone who doesn't like email, you're going to have some real big shortfalls with communication.
Can you tell us about a time when you made a difficult decision? Please describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others to come to a final decision.
So, thinking back, we all deal with difficult decisions in our lives. My husband and I recently made the decision together. Obviously, when you're married, lots of decisions get made in tandem. But we made the decision that he was going to deploy this year. And it was a very difficult decision. We have 2 children, and for those of you who can't see me, we've got a third on the way. And making that decision was a very tough one. So the first thing that I always do is take in all of the data, information, any research that's necessary. And part of that is listening very closely to my husband's knowledge of the military, but then also collecting the information about me, my career, my family, talking to our children, and reaching out and talking to those that would be part of our support network as well, and make sure that they have buy-in, because you cannot do it alone. You cannot do a deployment alone. And my husband needs support, and I need support, and my children need support, and making sure that everyone who would be part of that support network had the ability to communicate their concerns as well before we took all that information and made a final decision. Like I said, we did decide that he would deploy, and we still believe that that is the best decision for our family. But knowing that we had people who had our back in that decision is what made the decision a lot easier.
Can I just ask a quick?
Yeah.
Sorry if it's naive or silly, but I didn't know you had an option to deploy or not. I thought you got orders and.
Yeah. So my husband is a reservist.
Okay.
And a lot of the time
And this is completely unrelated.
Yeah, no. This is a follow-up question, unrelated. So in the reserves, typically they have what's called an involuntary mobilization, and that's what happened with our first deployment. You get a phone call, hey, you're leaving in 3 months. Get your affairs in order. But also with the reserves, there are a number of deployments that are listed on the federal military website. Positions that need to be filled that they would rather have filled with a volunteer before they pull somebody from their real life involuntarily. And so my husband had that opportunity to be a commanding officer for a patrol boat unit that's going overseas. And because of that, we had to make the decision, are we going to volunteer for that because he wasn't necessarily going to be pulled for that? Do we volunteer for it, or do we let someone get pulled for it that may not be us?
Got it. Thank you for humoring me.
Yeah, of course. It's
It's
confusing. Military life is confusing.
Yep.
Describe your expectations related to roles and responsibilities of council member, and what expectations you would have for city staff and your fellow council members.
So I believe that it is the job of the council to set the direction and to make any sort of voting decisions that are required, as well as to be fully informed on the decisions that they're making, both through independent research, but also through the expertise provided by the city staff. City staff are the people who are working on the day-to-day. They are the ones that oftentimes are dealing with constituent problems in the intimate ways. They're the ones that are going out and looking at damage reports or sight lines or getting the phone call because somebody didn't like the way something was done. And it's our job as city council members to respect that and respect their knowledge and expertise. But then again, to set the direction of the city and to help support the staff in those ways, as well as passing any ordinances, et cetera, that need to be passed as well. The council is a part-time position, so I don't believe that we necessarily need to get our fingers in the day-to-day. That, again, is why we have a wonderful city staff that does amazing things, and that we need to help them do their jobs. And that's really what the role of the city council is to set direction and then help the staff do their jobs.
Could you please compare and contrast your vision for the city in comparison to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan? In your answer, specifically share your thoughts on 1, overall housing growth in the community, 2, affordable housing, 3, infrastructure needs, and 4, the historic downtown.
So the first thing I would like to, let's go. Housing, downtown,
Affordable housing,
and
infrastructure.
I believe that the first thing we have to worry about is infrastructure, because growth is only as good as it is supported. If we are having people move in to areas that don't have proper support, whether it be streets, water, electricity, gas, we are not setting the community up for success, and we're not setting those individuals up for success. I think that also includes growth in essential non-city services. If we're going to be investing in making sure that we have affordable housing, some of these other things, we also need to make sure that we have the resources that those individuals need without use of cars, without use of extensive public transportation. We need to have a business community set up so that there are jobs for these individuals, that they don't have to be commuting an hour by bus to get to. It doesn't make sense to bring these people into the community and then not have what they need in order to be set up for success. And I think that is vitally important with use of community and business partnerships. And again, that business growth. There's a lot of talk in Carver County about increasing affordable housing out in places like Hamburg and New Germany. And the problem with doing things like that is, yes, we're spreading affordable housing throughout the county, and that's wonderful, but we don't have bus service out there. We have bus service here, but it's limited. So if you're bringing people into a community that does not have the things that they need in order to be set up for success, you're going to be spending more money trying to get those people to where they need to go in order to have that success. When it comes to affordable housing, I believe that affordable housing comes in many forms. We need to be obviously looking at high-density housing. That's something that is always on the table. But we also really need to be focused on affordable single-family living situations. We are in the middle of a housing crisis right now, and it is in large part fueled by the fact that retirees are staying in their homes longer, which means that starter homes are not available for families. And families are what build community in the long run. They're the ones that are going to be here for 50 years. And we need to be aware of that. A low-cost single-family home in Carver is almost $400,000. And that makes it impossible for a lot of families starting out to be able to move into our community and to be able to build those roots and grow that family and have that youth and vitality that a city really needs. So yes, affordable housing, apartments, townhomes, very important, but also that kind of middle of the road starter home is something that the area needs to pay more attention to. We also have part of that, like I said, is that we have retirees staying in their homes a lot longer. Eventually those retirees are going to have to move out of their homes. So we need to make sure that we also have affordable options for our seniors. But I would like to make sure that we are doing that in a very smart way, because a lot of communities are getting to the point now where all of their growth, or the vast majority of their growth, is senior housing. And we have to balance that with the need for housing for other members of the community as well. So we need both. And really it's that balanced approach between the two. So housing, affordable housing, infrastructure, and downtown. So downtown, I think one of the, I've talked about this before, but I think the downtown is one of our biggest assets as the city of Carver. If you look at communities that have really pushed and invested in smart destination style business development in their historic downtowns, you see a lot of success. Jordan, for example, was just in the paper touting their downtown and all of the renovations they've been able to do, the businesses they've been able to bring in. They've got a great brewery, they've got cute shops, and people go to Jordan to participate in their economy in their downtown. Same thing, Excelsior has the historic downtown. Shops, restaurants, places for people to go, things to do, and people go there. That's a destination. And cities, in order to thrive, we need to not just grow our in-place tax base, so our homes and our businesses, but we also need to increase our economy so that those homes and businesses are supported, and so that, you know, the businesses stay, the businesses grow, the businesses contribute more to the community. And so I think that smart development of the downtown and maintaining that historic nature is very important. And I think that the work that the city council did with the Getaway Motor Cafe was a real shining star of what can be done in a community that is invested in maintaining a historic downtown with businesses that are going to benefit from that historic nature.
Please share your assessment of the city's 2023 through 2026 strategic plan.
Yes, so the strategic plan, I think, generally has been very good. It's very strong. I really like the direction that the city has taken with this idea of, sorry, there's a fly.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's like right on my nose.
I know,
and I'm distracted. I think one of the smartest things that the city has done has been shifting towards the idea of anticipating future maintenance and growth and building that into the budget from the beginning. I am a very big fan of reducing bonding as much as possible. I know that it's almost impossible to do in this day and age, and emergencies come up. But I think that the pandemic, if nothing else, taught us the importance of having some money set aside in reserve. And while it may be earmarked for a future project or future maintenance, if we do run into an emergency, another pandemic, weather emergency, natural disaster, something like that, having that money set aside for a future project means that that money is available to reroute if necessary in a true emergency situation. And those were the cities that survived the pandemic in good financial shape, that came out of it not needing to make huge increases in taxes, and that came out of the pandemic not looking at bankruptcy and issues with paying their bills. And that is one of the things I actually learned from living in the city of Crystal, because they put a huge emphasis. They're actually moving completely away from bonding and towards specifically saving for projects. And they've been able to do great things. They built a whole new park. It's beautiful. But when the pandemic rolled around, they had that money in the bank. They were able to keep the lights on. They were able to keep city services running. And so I really have appreciated the fact that the city of Carver is moving more in that direction with this idea of, okay, we know this maintenance is coming down the road. We know these projects are going to need to happen. Let's start budgeting for them now instead of having to pull a huge bill and bond for it in the future.
Kayla, what are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city of Carver, and what are your ideas on how to approach them?
I think the first one is the speed of growth. My neighborhood has 80 houses, and the entire thing was built in 2 years. So we need to make sure that growing at that rate, we have the city services in place to be able to support that growth. Like I said, my neighborhood was very concerned when we started moving in because the new water treatment facility the updates hadn't been made. So we were having some issues with water pressure, water quality, all of those sorts of things as that transition was being made. And so making sure that we are aware that this growth is happening at this rate and that we have city services in place while that growth happens, anticipating that growth is very, very important. I think that the second thing, again, is the fact that with that growth, we need to be building community. The city of Carver, for as long as I can remember, and I've lived in this area for 25 years, lived in Chaska before, but this area, Carver, has always been the little brother of Chaska. And so it's very important to me that, especially with the growth that we're having, that we consciously build community throughout the city of Carver, both on the top of the hill with all the new development, as well as downtown and the existing developments on the, the east side of 11. Making sure that those communities, through events like Steamboat Days, and those sorts of things, that we're really building that community to make Carver its own community and not this community that you live in while you drive to Waconia or Chaska or Chanhassen to get services and to do community events and those sorts of things. That community is very, very important. I think that the third thing is setting the city up is part of that. So part of the development, part of the community is, again, coming back to the proper utilization of downtown. Downtown is beautiful, but we need to make sure that we're using it well. There are a lot of cities in the area that in the past have not made decisions that have built up their downtown in a way that makes it a place that people are going to either from the city or from outside of the city. And I want to make sure that the city of Carver does not become a 2-tier city where there's the city at the bottom of the hill and it's completely different from the city at the top of the hill. There are a lot of cities where that's the case along the river. And then in not quite such a physical way elsewhere as well. That there's the old part that nobody ever goes to, and then there's the new part that everybody's in. And I want to make sure that we continue to develop downtown as we grow so that we are not this 2-tier city, that we are one community and we are one city that just happens to have a beautiful downtown in addition to this nice modern space that we have up on the top of the ridge.
Kayla, why didn't you run for city council in the most recent election in 2022? And if appointed, would you run for re-election in 2024?
I did not run for election in 2022, primarily because my husband and I had great respect for Glenn Henry. We had met with him prior to the election when we were discerning whether or not I would be running for city council. We talked to him. Similarly, we talked to Lori and Christy and some other people as well. And so we decided that we actually support the board and appreciate what they're doing, and that there was not a need for one of us to run to replace those voices. I would absolutely be running for re-election in 2024 if appointed, because I believe that I will do great work for the city of Carver, and I want to be able to maintain that. But additionally, I want the citizens of Carver to be able to also say, yes, we think you're doing a good job, and we want you to continue doing this. That is what that election and what that vote means. And so it's important to me that whoever is appointed be willing to stand up to the citizens and show what they've done and be willing to stand behind it.
Thank you. What do you believe is the most impactful decision made by the City Council in 2023? Please explain why.
So, I think that the work that the City Council has done in the past year on updating and renovating the parks system is one of the most important things that they've done this year, because we have space in Carver for beautiful public spaces, but we haven't really utilized them. And when I talk about wanting to make sure that Carver is its own community and its own entity, the park system and the renovation of the park system into something that people are actually going to use is a huge part of that. There's a big difference between having your softball league having your Carver softball league play down at Community Park versus having your Carver softball league play up in Chaska. And being able to have these community activities in these new spaces that people want to go to and want to congregate at is a huge part of building community. And I know the City Council has done a lot of good work in their park planning in the past year and their park funding as well.
The City Council has work sessions at 5:30 p.m. and regular meetings at 7 on the first and third Mondays of each month. Does this meeting schedule conflict with any personal or professional commitments that you may have?
It does not. My position as a fertility care planner is self-scheduled, so I can make those decisions myself. I am not presently practicing as an attorney because my husband is deployed and I've got 2 kids, so we got a lot going on there. So I'm not going to be working late hours or anything like that, like you'd expect with someone who's working a firm job. Most of the things that I do, community building and things like that, are volunteer organizations and things that can be rescheduled for City Council related meetings.
Thank you, Krista. That concludes our prepared questions. I'll pass it over to the mayor.
All right, Kayla, do you have any follow-up questions?
I do.
Oh, Eric.
Just one. So your highest priority is infrastructure.
Yeah.
Really having a robust infrastructure for the city. Robust infrastructure that brings development in usually means big tax dollars.
Yes.
How do you sell that to residents?
Well, you sell that to residents by getting them to buy into it, to talking with them one-on-one, door-to-door, explaining what's happening and why you're doing it and why you want that investment. So much of what we do as a city, people are generally unaware. And it's only when the decision is made and they see the numbers that they decide they have an opinion on it. And so we need to be proactive in reaching out to communities within the city of Carver to make sure they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's an investment in the community as opposed to just a cost to the community. We also need to make sure that we're working our state and county partnerships as well to make sure we're getting as much grant and cost-sharing funding as possible in order to reduce those bills that go directly to our taxpayers.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. It was you mentioned, and I like that phrase, kind of, to not be a 2-tier city.
Yes.
Do you have a vision or like ideas or?
Yeah, I think
suggest getting that accomplished.
Well, I think that it's twofold. One, again, is building that destination downtown. This idea that this is where people want to go You'll notice that as we've opened up new businesses and restaurants and things in the last couple of years, there's a lot more people coming downtown. When the ice cream shop opened, all of a sudden my neighborhood was biking downtown all the time to get ice cream in the summer. Getaway Motor Cafe, when that opened, now when people are meeting, they're not meeting in Chaska or at the library or something like that. They're coming to downtown Carver to sit down and have these conversations and build that community. So making sure that we have, again, that destination downtown is really, really important to that. So that's the first part. But then the second part is to continue and really push these community events and things that bring the two halves of the community together. So Steamboat Days, again, great example. People from on top of the ridge all come downtown, go to the businesses, see their neighbors, and experience downtown. Similarly, when the Public Works Department opens up the firehouse every year, people from all over the city of Carver, including downtown, are coming up to the top of the ridge to see the services that are being provided by the city, to see their neighbors, and to have that connection. And so being able to foster those events as a city council to make sure that we are still connecting those two groups is important as well.
All right, thank you. I don't have any additional
Okay.
questions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Kayla.
Yeah. Have a lovely evening.
You too.
Can we take a brief rest break?
Yes. Hey, Krista, you are on deck, but we've been sitting for an hour and a half. So if you don't mind, we're going to take a 5-minute bio break, as they say in the corporate world. Are you okay with that?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
There are also caramel brownies back there. That's really what we're gonna go have.
I was gonna call it wrong. I'll come back and eat one on camera.
We good?
All right. Can you hear me, Krista?
I can. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, before we get started, just have a message to read from Councilmember Christy Mock. I'd like to apologize for my absence this evening for your interviews. I had a medical procedure on Monday, and unfortunately, I'm not feeling up to par as of yet and won't be able to attend. Please know that I'm watching online tonight and closely listening to each of your interviews. I appreciate all of you for applying, and I regret that I won't be able to be there in person tonight. Thank you. Before we get started with the prepared questions, Krista, we're giving folks the opportunity to introduce themselves to the council and to those watching online.
First of all, I hope you're feeling better, Christy, and you will be able to join meetings shortly. I also would like to thank everyone for allowing me to take this interview remotely. I am currently in Boston for work, and my name is Krista Goodell. I live in Carver. I've been living in Carver for 6 years, and I'm interested in the city council and how I can assist the current team.
Thank you. Starting off, Krista, why did you apply for the vacancy, and what makes you the best candidate to hold the office of council member?
So I'm going to start with the obvious, is there was an opening. And then from there, I was encouraged by current and former staff and city council members to apply for the position. I also felt that I could meet the needs of the city, both in terms of personality and also my previous experience. So I agree with the city's mission statement and vision statements of community, integrity, and stewardship, which I think are very important. And as a council member, that is something that you are representing as the city of Carver. Secondly, I have over 15 years of experience as a city commissioner. So before I was on our Parks Commission, 15 years of experience in city commissioners. I was an active member of the Parks Commission and Planning Commission for the city of Mare, which we lived in before we moved to Carver. I also served as a board member on the Chaska Area Chamber of Commerce representing Ridgeview Medical, and I currently serve on the Carver Planning Commission. I have since 2019, started as a delegate and now have a seat up at the big table.
Thank you. Please describe your vision for the city of Carver.
My vision for the city of Carver is to continue to grow, but also keep that same small town feel. So I want Carver to feel like home. I want everything you need to be here, that you don't need to leave the city. I want you to be able to be raised in the city of Carver and also retire in the city of Carver. I want to be able to run up the road, grab a cup of coffee, run into someone that I know and talk to them for an hour and be late to where I was probably supposed to be in the first place. I never want to have a map to get around the city of Carver and never get lost anywhere within the city of Carver.
Thank you. Krista, please describe your leadership and communication styles.
So some words that are frequently used to describe my leadership include overly organized, thoughtful, and mentorship. So personally, I like to think about things and then challenge when appropriate. I ask questions to learn more, but they're thoughtful questions and kind of maybe provoke others to think a little bit more also. I have a degree in technical writing, so my communication style is pretty to the point. I don't have a lot of fluff. This is what it is, this is how I see it, and ask for feedback. I am a good listener, I can conform under pressure, and I'm also a very quick learner. So those are some things that describe my leadership and communication style.
Thank you. Please tell us about a time when you made a difficult decision. Describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others to come to a final decision.
So mine is going to be work related. So I work in clinical research and I plan and run clinical studies. And we all went through COVID and hopefully never have to do that again. But there was many experts in the field. My role didn't change, but the perception of what I did changed. My husband will still probably tell you that I made him sell drugs, but that's totally not correct. So I have 20 years of clinical research experience, and I use a patient voice. So getting the experience of what happens to patients, or talking to a doctor about how patients is treated. I really had I'd be reading comments on social media and reading the newspaper and just thinking, well, this isn't correct. We need to continue to educate, or this is one way of looking at it, but you can also look at it a different way. And using experience and education to be able to present the ideas differently so people have a different understanding. And I feel that's a lot of like what I do on the planning commission and also as a council, that you do a lot of listening and educating about the reason or the rationale.
Thank you. Describe your expectations related to the roles and responsibilities of council member and what expectations you would have for city staff and fellow council members.
So I think it starts with mutual respect. We all come from different abilities, backgrounds, different experiences, but we're all ultimately working towards the same goal. We need to maintain a positive, open environment. We want to have people, whether it be on the council, city staff, or people that come to the open meetings, to be able to speak up and feel welcomed and feel that they're being heard. And then show that we all have a responsibility to the city and to the people who live in it. We're representing the city, we're representing the people who live here, and we need to do that together as a team.
Please compare and contrast your vision for the city in comparison to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. In your answers, specifically share your thoughts on 1, overall housing growth in the community, 2, affordable housing, 3, infrastructure needs, and 4, the historic downtown.
So first of all, I'm really glad you used the term comprehensive in the 2040 comp plan. It is pages and pages of fun stuff. I feel the 2040 comp plan is similar in a lot of ways to my vision. One thing that I do see that is lacking is the inclusion of the diverse population that's coming to Carver. We're seeing a lot more ethnicity and diversity coming in, and do we have in the city of Carver what those people need? So in relation to the housing market, it's growth. I think the main thing for the comp plan is using the term responsible residential growth. Are we meeting the comp plan in terms of, price ranges, target markets, and people of all abilities? Is anyone who wants to come to Carver going to be able to afford to live here, in the house, not the house that they want, but the house that they can afford? So that again goes to affordable housing, which I don't necessarily think we need it right now, but the plan is for 2040 to get affordable and attainable housing. Is the city on track to include, 528 units by 2040? I think we're getting there, but we're not there yet. There's definitely a mix of housing that's coming in with all the new developments. Is it affordable? Affordable is, I think, 30% of the household income goes to housing. There's some beautiful houses in Carver, but I don't think it's a place right now that everyone could live. And then infrastructure needs, review, planning, budgeting through capital improvement is crucial. If you don't plan ahead, how are you going to pay for something? You don't want surprises for the taxpayers. And I do believe that, the ordinances and zoning that we're reviewing at Planning Commission now, they're reviewed and updated to help ensure that, we're not approving things that shouldn't be approved. So infrastructure is again very important, trying to plan ahead. And then downtown Carver is a destination, and that's what we want it to be. We want people to continue going there. We want it for not only residents, but also visitors to serve as the gateway to the Minnesota River. And I think the planned park expansion will help create that use of public-private use, getting a variety of uses to the downtown. So that's kind of my review of the comp plan and how that fits with the vision. And again, I agree for the most part with it. It's a work in progress, and it's a steady climb to get there.
Please share your assessment of the city's 2023 through 2026 strategic plan.
So I feel that the 5 strategic priorities will help align the city and set the path forward for the future. I know a lot of work went into it, and the information is very well laid out and detailed of this is what you need to do and how you would need to get to those steps. I'd love to see, the plan, definitely agree, with the SWOT analysis for the findings. I really love the goal of the maximum of a 3% tax increase. I think a lot of the complaints come in as, why are my taxes so high? What am I paying for? And this is something that affects, homeowners, residents of the city of Carver. I also think this is one of the ones that's going to be a stretch and one of the hardest to obtain. I believe the areas within the responsive development, so expanding commercial industrial tax base, increasing jobs, new residential markets, that is something that everyone needs. And again, I think that one is going to be a hard one to obtain. And the one thing that I did see in any of the priorities for the 2030 or 2023, 2026 strategic plan is in relation to safety. And I think that, as a resident, you want to feel safe where you live, you want it to feel like home. And it's adequate, but is it going to continue to stay adequate as the city grows?
What are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city of Carver, and what are your ideas on how to approach them?
So I think the first one is we're growing, but are we growing too fast? Why or how are people coming to Carver? Like, what is drawing them here? And then do we have the infrastructure to support the development? So this relates to planning and capital, making sure that as we're approving the developments, that we have the infrastructure, because, as quick as we approve a plot, they're coming in, building the houses and coming in with the next phase. So basic needs is probably the next thing is, are we meeting the needs of the individuals of, people who have lived here 1 year versus who have lived here 50 years? Are you able to be born here and again, live the rest of your life here? Is everything you need here in terms of, medical, long-term care, daycare, restaurants, churches, experiences? And then the city does a good job of getting feedback from others, but I think the involvement of the people always is consistent. You always have the same people stepping up to do things. And we need to have others comfortable with coming forward with ideas, suggestions. Seems that everyone is really good at the complaint section, but like, how do we get them more involved in even coming to a planning commission or a city council meeting? They have questions and they're open meetings, but nobody wants to, you know, kind of come forward there. And then the third thing is keeping taxes low while also building for the future. So it again relates to planning ahead and making smart choices and determining what is really a need versus a want. So I think this is, you know, with the you know, Public Works Fire Department expansion, what is really needed there versus an aesthetic, and is it a functional or a, you know, something that needs to occur?
Why did you choose not to run for city council in the most recent election in 2022? And if appointed, would you run for re-election in 2024?
I was hesitant to run for city council because the best person for the job doesn't always win. And I think that's the case. You know, there is no participation award. Although you might be more qualified and experienced, it might not be, you know, in the end who wins. I did run for city council for the city of mayor when I lived there. Campaign, felt I was a great candidate, and I lost by 3 votes. So a little discouraged there. I hope to have the opportunity to run and use it as an experience to determine if it's something what I would like to do in 2024.
What do you think is the most impactful decision made by the city council in 2023? And please explain why.
So I could say something with taxes or water, but that's not something that affects everyone. So something that I think is very important are our park system and the related planning for those parks. So the process is very thoughtful and deliberate. You know, city staff applies for grants and, you know, luckily, you know, achieves those, receives the grants, is able to help with the funding. They ask for feedback, you know, whether it be through a focus group or, you know, open houses. So the feedback is encouraged and then incorporated in that plan. There's communication and education about what is the park plan, what's going to be happening moving forward. And then, you know, overall, the parks serve everyone. We have a variety, you know, from a 1-year-old to, you know, 99 with pickleball coming in. You know, we're able to save, you know, serve a lot of people within our parks.
And then finally, Krista, the city council has work sessions at 5:30 p.m. and regular meetings at 7 on the first and third Mondays of each month. Does this meeting schedule conflict with any of your personal or professional commitments?
So I am a planner and I like to schedule around things, so I will put it on my calendar. I'm responsible and committed, so if it's something I've agreed to do, I will be there. I do travel for work about twice a year, and as you know, I'm in Boston right now, so thank you for letting me join remotely. I would be available at those times and then would attempt to make myself available for any additional meetings or events that would be needed.
All right. Thank you. That concludes our prepared questions. I'll pass it over to Mayor Johnson.
All right, Krista, you anticipated my question about the kind of extracurriculars, if you will, that are involved in this role and availability for that, so thank you for that. I have a follow-up in mind, but I will give you guys the opportunity to ask the first one, unless you're not thinking of one.
I don't have one.
Okay,
I have one. Ready?
don't take mine.
It's fun for everybody. I'm ready.
All right. So one of the biggest challenges you said was keeping taxes low and balancing needs versus wants. What is an example of a want you think the city shouldn't have pursued? Or do you have one?
I do. So every time I come into downtown, I think how beautiful it is and how nice the city building is. But I also look at the clock that's on the corner and I think, wow, that's a great clock. But I don't think it was worth the money that was spent. I mean, at the time, that was the price of a small car. And it's a clock. And it tells time. So.
All right. That was my question. Thank you.
Krista, I was interested in how you said something about getting others comfortable with getting involved. And I think I kind of want to tie that to, you also mentioned something about looking at comments on social media. So in this world where it's so easy to kind of fire off a thought, but yet, you know, a few weeks ago we had a young woman who was attending a city council meeting as part of her high school project. And she was very cool, and she came up and she talked to us during community comment, and we asked her what surprised her so much, and she goes, well, that there's nobody here, which doesn't surprise us because we're here all the time, but nobody attends. And I don't think that there are more than tens and tens of people watching the videos online the day after, right? So my question for you is, how do we get others comfortable getting involved?
I think it's as you participate in different things. So Planning Commission oddly always has additional applicants that are interested in participating. And once you get involved, it seems you get involved more and more. But like you said, how do you get those people involved initially? In my neighborhood, I get a lot of questions about, what's happening with the plan? When is, Mocha Monkey coming in? So they're interested, but they're not necessarily involved. So honestly, I think it's almost like that invitation, like I will pick you up at 6:30 and we're gonna go listen to a city council meeting. Or if you don't like, something, or you have a question, here's how you can reach out to these people. Or did you know that you can, go on the city's website and write your question in, and the appropriate person will get a response back to you. You want it to be a positive experience the first time they reach out to someone on the council or the city versus a negative experience.
All right. Thank you, Krista. I think that is it for our questions this evening. Thank you so much. I hope
Thank you.
Boston treats you well. Take care.
Thank you.
So there's a thing that Brent can probably explain a little bit better, but to keep the humidity out of city council, the heat turns on for a few minutes each hour. Is that still a thing?
I don't know. I've never heard about that.
Really? I thought that was part of working.
You're talking to, I'm not the HVAC guy. I don't know.
Well, apparently it's an urban
Sure.
legend.
think
And so
it's-
like for a few minutes every hour, I'm either having my own personal summer, or you can definitely tell that it's
Logically, it makes sense. I don't know. I'm
So.
not HVAC my personal self.
I think it has something to do with the flux capacitor.
Yeah, there you go.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Take a seat, Eric.
All right, thank you.
So Eric, before we get started, I have a message from Councilmember Christy Mock. I would like to apologize for my absence this evening for your interviews. I had a medical procedure on Monday, and unfortunately I'm not feeling up to par as of yet and won't be able to attend. Please know that I'm watching online tonight and closely listening to each of your interviews. I appreciate all of you for applying, and I regret that I won't be able to be there tonight in person. Thank you. And so before we get into the prepared questions, we're giving applicants the opportunity to introduce themselves to the council and those watching online.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and interview for this position. I'm Eric Jansky. I live at 1906 Green Ash Drive up in the Spring Creek subdivision. Moved here about 14 months ago after I retired from active duty Air Force. I did 21 years active duty, and I grew up in the area outside Waconia, and still got family in the area, love the area, want to reconnect with this community, Carver County and the southwest suburbs again. So we moved back here, for those purposes.
Great.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to just apologize in advance. We've asked Brent to ask all the questions so that we can take notes.
Sure.
So our eye contact is going to be really poor as we're jotting down notes.
I'm used to it.
Eric, starting off, why did you apply for the vacancy, and what makes you the best candidate to hold the office of council member?
Well, first start off, I'm not the best candidate, okay? In my life, I always know there's someone always better than you. And with the other candidates, we have two members that are on the planning commission. We have a prior council member. We have an attorney, folks that have been involved in the community much longer than me. So yeah, I readily admit that, I come in here a little bit as the new guy with not a whole lot of experience, but I do bring other qualities, and we'll get into that a little bit. But the reason I did apply is in my travels worldwide, I always compare where I was to this area, and all the good qualities that of the area I was in versus Carver County. This part of the world, it is always locally wins. So I want to be part of the effort to keep things going in a manner that makes this place unique and special as it is. Also, as I've transitioned to a new phase of my life, I'm kind of looking for a new purpose, new mission. Reaching out various methods of volunteering, the Carver Lions, Treehouse, trying to get involved with the Carver Scott Vet Court organization and coaching sons football, that kind of thing. But looking for ways just to be involved, because I do feel, in this, without getting too philosophical, there's a difference between a civilian and a citizen. The citizen accepts responsibility for the population, the community, and is willing to give themselves to better that community. And I accept that responsibility. I want that responsibility to make things better, because I kind of feel like if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So I'm putting a paw up in the air, like, hey, I'm here to help. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. So why is it? What do I bring? What makes me a good candidate? Well, first of all, is I have about 25 years of experience in federal government, both on the kind of execution side as an Air Force officer and former fighter pilot, to the planning, programming, budgeting side as a couple years in the program, working Air Force budget and acquisition programs and whatnot. So I've seen kind of both sides of how the money flows and gets executed and whatnot. Not super familiar on city government, but just the federal government in general. I've bring kind of a worldwide perspective. I've lived 14 different places in the last 25 years. 5 different places overseas, and around the country. Been almost probably lost count, close to 40 different countries. But I bring a different perspective. You may not from others, of other cultures and other places, whatnot. And I bring some proven leadership. I've led troops in combat operations, on peacetime operations, multiple times as a commander of units in other organizations. I've been tested under pressure. I've been in some very high intensity situations, and I feel like kind of inoculated to a lot of that stress in some cases. Not always, but I also bring core values. So it's kind of hokey for anybody that's out there, but kind of try to execute my life by the principles of integrity, service, and excellence. So that's kind of like the foundation for everything that I try to do. And I also bring a mantra that I've used in many organizations that I've run in the past of make it right and then make it better. So, hey, whatever the problem is, let's fix the problem that needs to be addressed. Let's take care of the nearest alligator to the boat, the highest priority. And then after that's taken care of, let's figure out, how do we make this better? How do we improve the process? How do we improve the organization or the culture or whatever it is, so that we're done with our time in this organization? We've left it better than when we started.
Thank you. Please describe your vision for the city of Carver.
All right, well, I don't know if you see my resume. I put it on the top of the resume, but I'll summarize for the crowd there. First one is purposeful growth. I'm not a huge fan of just growth for the sake of growth. Growth is going to happen. It's natural progress or progression of life. But I want it to be purposeful so we maintain that small town feel. If you look at the Design Carver survey, almost every other comment on there was small town. Small town. Why we move here? For the small town feel. Now, I think that's what distinguishes the city from a lot of the other communities around here. Is a small town feel with its own unique character, and I like to preserve that. It's appeal for us when we were scouting for places to live. And to be frank, I left Waconia, graduated in '96, and off I was around the world for the next 25 years. And what I've seen from Carver then to Carver now is quite amazing. I'm very impressed, and I would like to keep that progress going. The pace and vector where the community's heading, and to try and help it not be just a commuter town. And then it gets into some other stuff we'll talk probably a little bit later, but not a place where people just live, get into a car, go for other services, jobs, and whatnot, and then come back in. It's kind of a vision is it's a place where people live, play, and work as much as possible. Kind of self-sufficient type of community. Also, a vision is to promote civic engagement. Apathy is a terrible thing, and if we can find ways to promote people to get involved, they have ownership of the process, and when they have ownership, they care, and that's what we need people to care. Not throwing spears at anybody, but you come in these meetings. There's really nobody here. There's viewership online and whatnot, but it'd be nice to see more engagement. You know, people can care. So figure out ways, and I got some ideas of how to encourage that engagement so people care. And when they care about the community, they'll protect their community and get involved and help improve it instead of apathy and the slow decay that goes with apathy of any organization. I'd like to see a diversified, resilient tax base, and that, again, was highlighted in a lot of the design Carver surveys and the comprehensive plan and 2023-26 plans of increasing the industrial and commercial tax base, so we're not so dependent on the residential property tax side of the house. Also, it helps, you know, if we can diversify the tax base. I'm not an accountant, but I imagine it would help alleviate some of the tax burden for the residents themselves, shifting some of those dollars to other sources. I also like to see fiscal strength. You know, we're kind of in some uncertain times as far as the economy, dealing with inflation, maybe not a recession. If we're not in a position where we can kind of weather those storms, it doesn't help us when we look at the infrastructure needs, you know, the build out of the water system and additional roads and whatnot. If we're kind of behind the 8 ball financially, then it kind of impedes the progress that the city needs to make to keep up the level of service that the residents are expecting. And then kind of lastly, vision-wise, this ties into maintaining a culture that's unique, that distinguishes Carver from other communities, is maintaining autonomy, that we're not dependent on outside funding and sources to do what we need to do, that we feel is appropriate. You know, who knows what's best for Carver is the people of Carver. And so if we can keep that in mind of, you know, vision-wise of what are we doing that keeps our independence and maintains our autonomy so we can determine what is best for our city versus outside sources, I feel that's it's great as long as, and with that, yeah, well, never mind. Sorry.
Sure.
I'll just segue another topic, but I've gone long enough.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
Please describe your leadership and communication style.
Okay, so for leadership, basically it's kind of more of a deliberate and principled leadership style that's developed over, you know, decades of leadership experience. Kind of going back to an earlier reference to the core values, you know, I use that as the integrity, service, and excellence is kind of my bedrock there. So for integrity and my leadership, why it's like you got to do the right thing. It may not be the popular thing. Sometimes you have to be the parent and do what's right, not the popular thing. And that means also doing the right thing when nobody's looking. You know, it's easy to do the right thing when people are watching you, but if you're not doing when the eyes aren't on you, then you failed as a leader. Also, as far as service, you know, I believe strongly in a servant leadership model. You know, that you know, it's empathy, being a good listener, having a commitment to the organization, and being a good steward of the resources. But also it means the leadership isn't about you. The leadership position is about the people that you serve. You should be leading in front, leading by example, but the whole experience should not be about you. You're there to serve the organization, not the other way around. Going with my leadership style, I'm very big into soliciting input, starting from the bottom down. I've run into experiences if you try to solicit input or provide your inputs first, that subordinates end up shutting down because they don't want to, they feel like they're contradicting you. So solicit from the grassroots, from the lowest level on up. Take as much input as you can without the danger of paralysis by analysis. You just overthink things. You do some due diligence and then make the best decision with the information you have at the time and press forward. And if you need to revisit, okay, you need to revisit. Communication-wise, I'm pretty deliberate. Kind of harken back to my previous professional career. We had a big thing. It was always clear, correct, and concise communication. You know, words mean things. I'm kind of contradicting myself by the amount I'm talking right now, but you get to the point and be very clear so people understand you, your intent and your meaning, both verbally and with nonverbal cues. Try to be an active listener. Kind of take, is anybody familiar with Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and Influence People? that book. A very influential book. I take a lot from that book as far as my communication style, getting to be an empathetic listener, getting people to talk about themselves instead of you being stuck on broadcast. Solicit inputs, get them talking out there, get them comfortable, because everybody's got a story to tell. They got experiences that are very valuable. Take those inputs in, and then while you're communicating, always trying to seek a common ground. It's not a battle. It's not about I win, you win. It's like, what can we get to a common ground that is a win for both sides? It's not a zero-sum game. And then also with my communication style, I try to incorporate a little bit of Ben Franklin's philosophy. If you're anybody familiar with his early versus late communications. Early in life, he was kind of abrasive because he was very like, I'm right, you're wrong. And then he realized, people don't really like me too much. Why is that? And he had a trusted friend told him, like, well, you just come off too abrasive. So he started rephrasing things like, it appears to me, I believe. He kind of predicated a lot of his statements that he felt strongly about, but he softened them, and it made him much more likable because it was less confrontational. It's more, let's reach a consensus versus me versus you, who can be a winner and a loser. And I try to incorporate that into my communication style as well.
Thank you. Can you please tell us about a time where you made a difficult decision? Describe the process you used and how you solicited input from others to come to a final decision.
Okay. So this is an Air Force story. So pardon me if it starts getting a little too jargonish. I'll try to keep it simple. But I was running an organization in New Mexico that was responsible for all the ejection seat equipment and egress and survival equipment that went with the jets. And so it was an organization about 50 people or so. And part of the routine inspection, a wrong part got installed on the ejection seat parachute. And we had to shut down operations and inspect all 72 jets. And it boiled down to basically a couple of technicians, young kids, were doing their procedure, but they were just pencil whipping. They weren't paying attention to the task at hand. And it was 3 people basically kind of pencil whipped the inspection. And so that didn't go over very well with base leadership because, the chance of ejection is fairly low. But if something did happen with one of those jets where they had the wrong parts installed, it would have led to a fatality. So it was very serious. So as the commander of the organization at the time, is my job to first fix the problem. So we got that taken care of, inspections and retraining and whatnot. But then the actual part was discipline. What do we do with these 3 folks that have been trusted to do a job? They didn't do the job as we needed to. Now there needs to be some kind of negative incentive, So my superiors were taking kind of a more of a punitive stance. They wanted to see some kind of punishments. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes it's a weakness. But I consulted with my senior enlisted troops that were kind of between me and the folks that had screwed up the inspection, and we had some good conversations, and basically got a deeper perspective of what was happening. What it boiled down to is I ended up taking a stance that I was going to go kind of against the wishes of my bosses, because they were not at the grassroots level seeing what was happening like I was, and getting inputs from the folks that were actually touching the process and whatnot. So I like to go with a kind of more softer discipline, basically some paperwork admonishments that we call it file in my desk drawer. So literally I had the paperwork, I go through all the formal discipline type stuff, but I put it on top of my desk drawer. I gave them 6 months. All right, you guys screw up again in 6 months, we're going down a different route with this. We're going to have to go punitive. But if you guys keep your nose clean and you can show me that you're trying to improve and you're working hard and you're learning from this experience, then I'm taking the paperwork and putting it in the shredder. And surprise, surprise, they ended up just knocking it out of the park. One of the 3 won a quarterly award. That's the thing we do, every quarter, just to recognize superior performers in different organizations and whatnot. You got other kudos, official and non-official, from other leadership. above me around the base for the work they were doing, and it ended up being a win. So that was me kind of basically doing what I felt was right based on the circumstances that I knew at the time, and it ended up working out.
Eric, please describe your expectations related to the roles and responsibilities of council member and what expectations you would have for city staff and fellow council members.
Well, the first expectation that I have for myself, the council, and all employees is to remember that we are stewards of the taxpayer dollars. It is not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. So it's our charge to make sure that we're spending it prudently in a way that helps the city move forward positively. My expectation is to be prepared. There's a few things in life I've had it on my son's wall and on my phone wall, but there's a list of things that you can control. Number one is being on time, your attitude, and the third one is being prepared. So I will be prepared. I've put a lot of work into this to get ready for it. And you also expect that I'll be serving with integrity. It's from a service mindset. And we're always going to be striving for excellence. There's always ways to make things better, to do it better. And that kind of goes into our expectation that I will be questioning, if I was fortunate to get selected, I'll be questioning a lot of things. Most of it's for me to get part of my due diligence to get up to speed on a lot of issues, to learn the process, but also to maybe there's a better way of doing things. It's a luxury as a new member to any organization that, take this room, for example. Things kind of start to blend into the background the more familiar with it. You don't recognize, why is there a Kleenex box on the windowsill over there after a couple meetings? But it's to a new person, new to the organization, I notice it right away. So why is that there? And it drives some innovation. It drives some questioning of processes. And, we haven't really thought about that. Or, that's something kind of fallen out of our cross-check. Maybe we should address that. So you expect that from me. And lastly, I expect that this will be a thankless job. It's one of those things where you can't make everybody happy. It's one of those things you have to go into that it's not a popularity contest. You're here to do the best job you can with the information that you have under circumstances you have. And I equate it to a leadership lesson that I had a mentor teach me a long time ago is you may have 100 people that you need to go do a task. 80% will be on board with very little convincing. Next 10%, it's going to take some work to get them on board, okay? That's where you spend your time. The last 10%, no matter how hard you try, how much effort you put into them, you're not going to get them on board. So don't waste your time with them. And that 10% sometimes is vocal. Sometimes that 10% will be the ones that will make you feel like you're doing a bad job. But you can't let that 10% get you down because it's a thankless job, and you just got to do it the best you can with what you got.
Sorry, I'm contemplating killing this fly.
Yeah, I see it's giving you some things out there.
The gavel to kill it?
Huh?
Do you want the gavel to kill it?
No, thanks. Compare and contrast your vision for the city in comparison to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. If you could please specifically share your thoughts on 1, overall housing growth in the community, 2, affordable housing, 3, infrastructure needs, and 4, the historic downtown.
Okay. So just to kind of set this table on this, the lines of communication have changed. So lines of communication being rivers, railroads, and roads. And Carver obviously started along a line of communication, as any major cities have, along a waterway. And as things have evolved, obviously steam stopped and the railroads changed kind of the character of the city, and now we've changed to a new line of communication, 212. I feel kind of 212 is the future of Carver. It's not the end-all be-all Carver, but it's the next phase of Carver as the new line of communication has kind of kicked in for us. So as far as comparison, I do agree with the plan that we may need to reevaluate the capacity and capabilities of the public transit. I mean, it's great that we have the infrastructure in place and there are pathways on that, but I do agree that maybe we have enough to meet the current need and the near future need. I do agree with the plan's assessment that there's a need to develop the commercial and industrial tax base. And it goes part and parcel with some other stuff as far as the kind of the future of Carver. And the plan's capacity to water for water capacity increase. I believe that's a smart move. It's a no-brainer if you look at the glide path of the population of the city as it goes through growth. And also, I agree with the plan's plan to incentivize amenities. Bring in things like a grocer, maybe a hardware store, urgent care, other small businesses that now you have to leave the city, go to Jan or Victoria or Chaska or whatever to get those services come back. If we can have those in-house within near proximity or within the city, that just makes us a little more self-sufficient, and it keeps money in the local community, which helps out everybody. To contrast, I'd like to see a little bit more emphasis on autonomy so we can control our own destiny, that we're not beholden to some other outside sources that may be dictating some of our policy, especially when it comes to zoning. That gets into some of the stuff as far as housing growth and affordability. I know the Met Council has their metrics, and I have some consternation with their methodology on how they did their metrics and how they got to some of those points. I would like to see a little bit more allowance for market forces and local residents to dictate some of the housing policy. I'd like to see a little bit more mix of houses. We essentially have, especially when it comes to single-family houses, very much just tract builders essentially building the exact same house on the exact same plots with, I think we're down to 7.5 foot minimum in between houses. You can stick your hand out, shake hands with your neighbor in his house. And why I bring that up is I feel that if we're going to keep that small town feel of Carver, we need to develop neighborhood nodes that get people out and engaged. And I've had a discussion with neighbors of mine. My neighborhood is, we have great parks, cool, but they're commutable parks. You go into subdivisions, there's very rarely spots where parents can allow their kids to walk a block or two or three to a green space to play. In small lots, there's not enough room in the back for them to play football or baseball or whatever. Case in point, my kid loves the skate park at Ironwood. Every time we go, we have to load him up and drive him over there. I've lived in other communities, and this is mostly a zoning thing, where HOAs, the builder had to go in and put in small green spaces that were essentially within like a couple blocks of each house. So you as a parent, you say, okay, cool, go down to Park X, 2-3 blocks down the road, walk, play, ride your bike, or whatever, and I know where they are as a parent. Instead of having, I understand there's economies of scale with larger parks and whatnot, but it drives a barrier to utility when people have to drive and get to them, especially in the winter months as well. If you want to go sledding downhill or whatever, I got to load all the kids up in the car, drive them to Park X so they can play, and the parents are sitting there, waiting for the playtime to be over, and then bring them back home. So I like to get into basically just a little more autonomy zoning-wise, so we can allow these downstream effects that kind of alluding to allow us to control our own destiny and make a little bit more smaller communities, like where folks are actually able to get out and engage and kids can play and whatnot instead of having to go to a central location. So that's kind of my big thing as far as comparing and contrasting with the 2040 plan.
Thank you. Please share your assessment of the city's 2023 through 2026 strategic plan.
Oh, first of all, I would say I'm very impressed. I was not expecting both the 2040 comprehensive plan and the 23-26 strat plan seeing such a plan. I've seen a lot of strategic documents through the DoD that don't have this kind of thought. That's big. I probably should take that back a little bit. They don't have metrics associated with it. And I was very impressed. So, kudos to the city and the council and the commissions that obviously put a lot of legwork into developing that document. I think it's a great starting point. Definitely gives us a plan. A lot of organizations run with the no plan, game plan. We'll just kind of act reactively instead of proactively. And I think the 2023 plan and the 2040 strat plan, we set some good guide rails and expectations for where the city wants to go, and it's good guidance. Because in reality, there's very rarely any higher level government agency that's going to come and save you. A lot of times, if you have a problem, the solution needs to come organically from the grassroots level, and I see that's what we're doing here. I would say the plan itself is great. I love the metrics. There's a few, I got all these yellow binders here, all little line item things that kind of, questions, comments on each one. I'd like to get some more explanation on, but I think the strat plan could be taken a logical step forward. And I may be showing my ignorance as far as the financial planning side of the house of the city, but you have a 5-year plan. And this is kind of coincident with some other, get back to DOD, they plan basically in 5-year increments. They always have your current year budget, and then you have the 4 out years for what's called the FYDP, the Future Year Defense Program. Anyways, we have the 2024 budget, but I think with the 2023, 26 strat plan, you can marry that up with a 5-year kind of financial plan. It's each year is going to be adjustable as you get to that budgeting, but you can start planting money in the out years for different programs to kind of get an idea of upcoming costs, and so you can foresee the bills coming up. We have that essentially with the road infrastructure plan with what's being milled and reclaimed and whatnot. But you can take all the different departments and kind of combine into one, have kind of a city 5-year financial plan that helps at least with some forecasting of costs, and you can start figuring, okay, when do we need a new fire engine? Okay, well, this year we got some funds that might work for 3 years out or 2 years out or 1 year out or other examples. It's just a minor critique, but I'd like to see the focused communication section get developed a little bit more. The kind of, to me, the next logical part was developing that into a civic engagement section. So how do we, again, there's earlier discussions of how do we get folks to have more ownership into the process and care about the city. Not that they don't already. I mean, there's a lot of people that love the city and they care greatly, but the wider net we can cast, the more people we can pull in, the more they care, the greater. So part of the civic engagement would be focused communication. How do we communicate to them and get them back? And a two-way communication engages people, but the next step would be other methodologies and mechanisms to engage people. One that comes to mind, this was when I was living in Goodyear, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. They have what's called a Citizens Academy. So they run it every couple weeks, and they had a cohort, I always pronounce that word. It was like 20 people, and it was basically kind of a government 101 class. Hey, let's go to the fire department, let's go to water treatment, let's go to some of the city offices and see how they make the sausage, so you have a better understanding of the processes. And it sparked interest, and also helps people understand. I had experienced this in career too, that it's easy to say, well, that stinks, I don't like this, that's a dumb decision. But then once you get and see the reasoning behind that decision, you have some empathy and you have some context to the decision, and it helps you understand a little bit better. And I felt that Citizen Academy program really helped myself and other people that went through it understand why the city is doing X, Y, and Z. So that'd be something I'd like to see.
Thank you, Eric. What are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city of Carver, and what are your ideas on how to approach them?
First one I say is some macroeconomic uncertainties. Should have brought some water in here. So first of all, no, I'll survive. Was it unopened? Yeah. You didn't lick it? Not that one. All right. Yeah, all right. Well, the seal's still good on this. All right, yeah.
All the
Fred's only had a few sips, you'll never notice, except for the cold that you'll develop.
Yeah. Not a hint of backwash. Good. So the macroeconomic uncertainties. Obviously, we're going through kind of turbulent time with inflation really putting a strain on how far a dollar can go as far as budget. We don't have the purchasing power, and we basically got, macroeconomically, we got too many dollars chasing after too many products, and it drives up the prices. So any slop that may have been in the budget, whatnot, is now being, from my understanding, it's being taxed, or not taxed, but it's being stressed a little bit, and it's a fair statement. Minnesota is the 5th highest total tax burden in the country. The people are already financially strained, and we have high tax on top of it. I'd like to, see if there's ways that we could assess those economic uncertainties, maybe delaying some projects. Maybe things we don't need to buy right away. Maybe some equipment, instead of new, we go used, or maybe we essentially have to figure out what is a need and what is a want, until we get a little more clarity of where the economy is going and what kind of revenues that we expect to be able to play with here in the city. But just figure out what is truly a must do and what is a nice to have, a want versus a need, and see if there's any ways that we can build in some financial wiggle room that way. And part of that's going to be diversifying the tax base too, so we don't have our eggs in one basket. That will help us through some of that macroeconomic uncertainty. A challenge I say is just how do we maintain Carver's charm? It's easy for the city to kind of become this is decades down the road, but become a kind of a nondescript subdivision. This town has obviously a historic district. It's got what people want, that small town charm. They want to be able to interact with their neighbors. And so if we can maintain that kind of live, play, work mentality of where people are more here instead of just become a commuter community, that would help. And part of that is focusing on trying to maintain Carver as a downtown itself as a destination. The Historic Preservation Society and previous organizations have done a great job of preserving the historic buildings and promoting the downtown. And I think that rebranding is moving in the right direction. We keep that up because Carver is more than the Carver Triangle. There's a lot of goodness here that people need to know about. Not that we have to become like a Stillwater or some of these other places where it's just kind of a tourist trap on the weekends as far as a destination. But if the downtown has some character, cool. But part of that is we have to understand that there's kind of the organism of the city of Carver has grown, and there's a mitosis. Okay, we have now grown to beyond just the core downtown and some surrounding neighborhoods. We now have a new line of communication at 212, which is fine. You have, with that mitosis, we have now 2 cells. We have the downtown cell, and we have some of these outer subdivisions where people are going to be living their lives, but they come downtown if they want, or people want to live downtown. There's opportunity for them to live downtown. There's some variety. There's some option to suit the needs and wants of the citizens. But as long as we don't realize it's not a competition between, it's not just going to be the 212 corridor versus downtown. It's a symbiotic relationship that we need to maintain. With that as well, part of the charm is how do we maintain our own autonomy over the development. It's easy for the Met Council to come in with their density metrics and whatnot. And essentially, we start putting up large, nondescript national builder subdivisions that all essentially look the same. Is there pathways that we can allow smaller builders in? Remove those barriers to entry, allow market forces to dictate a wider variety of housing. With the multifamily, the apartments, bigger lots, smaller lots, patio associations, whatever. Allow some more that to develop, so it can happen organically to a way that allows the city to basically develop the way it wants to. And with that, that's kind of it segues into my number 3 thing is just how we maintain our sovereignty. We have kind of harped on like, you know, if we control our own destiny, we control our own character. But part of that is the civic engagement, and part of that is how do we have people care about this town? And, you know, I alluded, or I kind of stole my thunder earlier about the Citizens Academy. That's one way. I feel like the festivals that, you know, Steamboat, Soggy Bottoms are a great way to get people engaged, get people to know each other. If there's ways that we can maybe explore maybe some other kind of civic engagements, festivals, whatnot, that gets people out and mingle, to know your neighbor, either in the neighborhood or citywide or whatever. I think that would help us quite a bit, you know, maintain our control of our community.
Great, thank you. Eric, why did you choose not to run for city council in the most recent election in 2022? And if appointed, would you run for re-election in 2024?
Oh, so the easy one, that I wasn't here. So at that time I was living in Tucson. That was my last duty station. So we stayed there about a year after I retired before we made a decision to move here. And I didn't run for any elections anywhere else. I was at because there's a Department of Defense prohibition against active duty officers holding elected office. There's also highly discouraged to get into partisan politics, fundraising, endorsements, that kind of stuff. So I just stiff-armed all that stuff the best I can. But now I'm not wearing that. I'm not wearing a uniform anymore. I've started phase 2 of my life. So that's why I didn't run, and I didn't run in the past. But I would run in 2024 if given the opportunity, and if the residents feel that I've done a good job and they want me to. I'm not just going to do it for myself.
Eric,
Yep.
quick clarifying question. You said you moved here 14 months ago?
Yes, July of 22.
Okay, so the question was, why didn't you run last year,
Because, well, when was the election?
November?
Okay, then I wasn't aware of the election then.
Okay.
Eric, what do you think is the most impactful decision made by the city council in 2023? And if you could please explain why.
I'd say there's 2 impactful decisions. I mean, if you want to talk a single point decision, I would say the 23-26 strat plan is, if you want, as far as a single decision, the ratification or the approval of that was very impactful. I believe that was June 7th meeting. For the reasons I stated previously, you set some good guide rails, we set a vector, expectations, and metrics to see if we meet those goals. You know, we have the scorecards and whatnot. It holds people accountable to executing that plan. It's not just, hey, we put a lot of work, we're going to put it on a shelf and kind of forget about it. It keeps it viable and keeps it in people's cross-check and keeps them thinking about it if we're revisiting and measuring those metrics and whatnot. So I feel that was a great decision and puts the city on a good path. As far as a kind of collective or a collection of decisions, I think all the levy stuff, it's a must-have to do. So the various decisions through the year to secure the various sources of funding to get, in my opinion, the biggest alligator to the boat, that levy certified for the protection of people and property of the city. It was, you know, definitely by far the biggest decisions, not a single point decision, but the biggest decisions that the city and the council have done.
And then finally, the city council has work sessions at 5:30 and regular meetings at 7 on the first and third Mondays of each month. Mm-hmm. Does this meeting schedule conflict with any personal or professional commitments that you have?
It should not. So, for example, sorry, I should lead off. I'm a pilot for FedEx, so my schedule is, it's fluid, okay? But as long as I know when and where the meetings are going to happen, I can build my schedule around those meetings. Obviously, there's going to be some, and that usually works about a month out timeline. If I have those inputs anywhere from about 4 to 2 weeks ahead of time, I can make the schedule work. Now, there's going to be meetings that come up short notice, like this one, for example. So right now I'm supposed to be in Fargo for a trip, but I was able to drop that trip. So I finished a trip in Memphis last night, jump seat at home on a FedEx plane this morning, got in at 6 a.m., here for the meeting, and then tomorrow I go back to Memphis for another trip and I get back Friday. I can move trips and stuff around to accommodate short notice stuff as appropriate. So professionally, there shouldn't be any conflicts, and personally, this would be the number one priority. Unless there's some family emergency or some family event that's high priority, I do not foresee any conflicts.
Thank you, Eric. That concludes the prepared questions. I'll pass that back over to Mayor Johnson.
All right. Eric Pershman has been leading us in follow-up questions. So first for the follow-up questions is Eric.
So we asked about some of the biggest challenges, and you said that maybe one of the things we do is delay projects and a needs versus want statement. Can you think of a want that the city has pursued since you've lived here that if you were on city council, you might not have pursued?
I would, I'm not super familiar with all the different funding streams that go into these two projects, but one of them is some of the trail system stuff. And we have a great trail system, and I like to see that, or I'm glad to see that the city is pursuing further development of that. But if we start getting a little constrained financially or fiscally, maybe that's something, further expansion, we just have to put on pause for a little bit and use those funds, those resources elsewhere to take care of more of a need or a more pressing want at that point. Not that they have to be canceled or any of that kind of stuff, but I feel that's probably a candidate project that we could probably maybe delay, kick the can a little bit until the funds are a little bit more plentiful, that we can address that issue. Another one is the Creek Park project at the old sewer location there. My understanding is most of that funding is coming from outside sources, but I imagine there's going to be some funds probably from the city eventually. If we get into a fiscal pinch, maybe that'd be another candidate to let's delay this project a little bit till funds are more readily available.
Okay, thank you.
Lori?
Yeah, I have a question. So Eric, when you responded to the question about the 2040 comprehensive plan and that you'd like to see more autonomy, you gave the example of parks. Are there other areas too that you don't think we have autonomy or like you'd like to see more?
Yeah, so right now, under the Thrive MSP 2040 plan, we're an emerging suburban community, and that puts us under essentially the visible hand of the Met Council for my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is all personal research, so I don't see how the sausage is made on all this stuff. So that drives certain housing densities that we need to meet to meet the planned goals in that point. And if you have a plot, a subdivision that's going in, my understanding is now if you start allocating a certain amount of acreage for smaller parks and whatnot, now that's a hit against your density. So that drives then logically consolidation of parks to outside the plots to these kind of bigger plots of Ironwood and Lions Park and whatnot. So that's essentially we're taking a tool out of our hands because the Met Council is driving some of our decisions, or not driving, but affecting some of our decisions at that point. So if there's a way, I know like Waconia and Prior Lake and Farmington have gotten outside the planning zone jurisdiction of the Met Council to give themselves a little bit more autonomy, I believe, would be something that, I don't know, I'm curious to see their process on that, and was it beneficial or not. Not that it's something we want to pursue or not, but I'd like to see the backstory and the kind of on how that happened and how that affected their policy making and zoning and whatnot.
Thank you.
I do not have any follow-up questions, so thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you for the water.
Unopened.
All right, we are done with the interview process. I would entertain a motion. Mr. Merrick.
Just for folks that might not be tuned into the process, the city council is going to be discussing the results of the interview and debating applicants at the regular meeting on Monday, October 2nd, which begins at 7 p.m. So if folks are interested in seeing the deliberations, they can come to the meeting or watch online.
Thank you. Thank you for wrapping that up. Appreciate that. Okay, now, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Hirschman,
I will second.
and a second by Councilmember Sayer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.